how certain are you that the person who is talking to you right now is in fact a real person and not an AI-generated deepfake? Fear not, I am a real person. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. I'm Yong Jing from Smjk Samtet, and the code for my school is AEB2053. Today, I'll be discussing about this book titled Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, authored by Philip K. Dick. This science fiction was originally published in 1968, about half a decade by now, and you might think that it is dated and out of fashion. However, it is quite the opposite. It's increasingly relevant in what is happening right now. How relevant it is, I'll be telling you right afterwards. So, this story is set after a nuclear breakdown after the war called World Terminus War, in which it has devastated basically all living beings on Earth, and half the human population is forced to emigrate to colonies in Mars. And at the same time, for each family who do so, they are given one android servant. An android servant is basically like a machine with a human appearance, which has all the human capabilities, like the ability to converse, to articulate, and to think like a human. So the problem came when 6 androids, of which the latest models, they escaped from the colonies in Mars and they came down to Earth impersonating as human beings. And this is where our main character, the protagonist Rick Deckard, comes into play. He's a bounty hunter, a kind of police officer that is specifically tasked to kill, or much more euphemistic way, to retire these fugitive androids. So how are they distinguished? How are they differentiated from humans if they are basically indistinguishable? So these androids, they have one intrinsic flaw, which is they do not have any emotions, and thus the inability to empathize with other beings. And so the bounty hunters, they will administer a task called a void camp task, which basically the bounty hunters will invoke emotional triggering question to test out whether they have a characteristic as outlined by the test. If they do not have, the bounty hunters, they have the authorization to kill the androids on the spot. So a story like that will not be interesting, right? It will be certainly mundane if it's just about an officer, a detective-like officer killing androids. So this is where the author's magic comes into play. The author proposes quite a few interesting philosophical ideas. One of which is, what are the consequences of technological advancement? So in this book, the machines are so sophisticated that it is basically indistinguishable from ordinary human beings. And this is actually quite relatable to our world. You might argue that, oh, this is basically too far-fetched, that technological advancement bringing existential threat to humanity is basically too distant in the future. But I'd like to say that our status quo is actually pivoting towards that world. Let's take, for example, ChatGPT. I'm sure you've used it and you have been astounded by it, I'm sure, by its ability to generate natural responses instantaneously. So, but have you ever thought, if one day this ChatGPT, it can convince you that it is indeed a real person, that it can one day blur the line between a human and an android, or even it can deceive you? And this is where our second theme, the identity as proposed by the author. So what exactly distinguishes between an android and a human? So in this story, it is empathy. However, our protagonist, he's starting to question his own sanity as he progresses on to kill these fugitive androids. If he's a human, then for sure he has empathy. But does killing androids still indicates that he has empathy? Wouldn't it be equivalent to killing living beings. So I hope you have enjoyed my sharing of this book. That's all from me. Thank you.